The changes I emailed you about.
Okay.
I make a motion that we adopt these changes and pass them out for people who were at the meeting last time, so they can compare this to what they thought happened.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, and we have some discussions about adopting some changes that will pass out. And I am aware of those changes. They are additions, details.
And there's some corrections too.
Pardon?
There's also some corrections.
Some corrections. Can you point out the corrections?
Well, one of the corrections is it said that the HRNA is a developer. It's not. HRNA is a land use expert.
Where's that at?
HRNA is a land use expert and
Yeah,
a
that's
developer.
that's on the final bullet. So if you look in the final bullet, at the bottom of the page, up the third line from the bottom, where the parentheses, where the word HRNA is in black, the first three words before that say land use experts. In the original, which is in the screen graph, the box up on top, it says that they're land developers.
Okay. HRNA will make that notice is our land use expert and not developers. Any other discussions? Any other changes?
Yeah, everything in blue is a change.
Okay. Those are not changes. Those are additions. Right?
There are additional changes. There are changes
Okay.
by adding information that's
All
pertinent
right.
to what happened at the meeting.
Okay. Okay, looks good to me. If anybody wants to accept, do we want to accept them as changes to the minutes? All in favor?
I move that we accept the proposed changes to the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we will proceed. All in favor of accepting the minutes as they are with the approved changes that were handed out? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, great. It will be added to the meeting minutes. Officer Michael, how are you today?
Doing fantastic.
I
How's
hope
everybody
you had a
doing?
wonderful weekend.
It was wonderful.
Good.
New look. Gonna try a few different things today to try and get you guys to see really what's going on in your neck of the woods. So let's hop on into it. Outlined in blue here is the rough idea of what the Central CAC looks like. And then we have our police beats that kind of match up with the CAC. So as you can kind of see, like beat 523 stretches into the Central CAC, beat 521 goes in there, and it kind of extends out. So if you're living in Walnut Terrace, what goes on in this beat affects you, even though when I'm reporting, you're not seeing what's going on there. So bear with me, and I'll kind of show you what's going on in the next slides. I want to give you a complete look of what's going on in your neighborhood. So for the month of March, we're dealing with calls for service. There was just a little over 2,000 calls for service. And then your incident reports out of those 2,000 calls was 253. So just highlighting the top 5. Calls for service patrol, those are just your security checks. Hey, you know, what's going on in this neighborhood, foot patrols, just kind of everything that goes under what you would think is a normal patrol duty. Traffic, that's 501 traffic stops in the Central CAC. Suspicious people, that's somebody that you see out in your neighborhood, that's a suspicious package, that's a suspicious vehicle that's on the street. 128 calls. Others, just kind of the all-encompass. I lost my cell phone, this Uber driver, he ripped me off, that kind of falls in that other. And then the warrants, there was 105. Keep in mind that probation and parole does have an office in your Central CAC, so when people turn themselves in, you know, that number is going to be inflated a little bit for you. Incident reports, others, just like I said previously, It's just your miscellaneous reports. Somebody's shopping cart banged my car. Somebody's dog is barking too loud. I need it documented. Drugs, we took 51 drug reports. Simple assaults, 24. Vandalism, 17. Those are damage to properties. And then your DWI, or DUIs, driving under impairment, and fraud, we're tied at 13 reports. Jumping into your neighborhood, beat 521, you have 4 officers patrolling that patrol beat. Not all of it falls under the Central CAC, but what's going on there is you had 709 calls for service. Your top 5 calls were patrols, traffic, other, suspicious persons, crashes, and warrants served. Top incident reports, the all other miscellaneous, drugs, driving under the influence, simple assault, and fraud. I combined the beats 515 and 516, mostly because of the geographical area, and they're kind of similar with what's going on. We do have a special guest here that patrols this. Calls for service, 683. There are your patrols, traffic, crashes, suspicious persons. Your others and your disturbances are tied. And that other incident report that seems to be dominating throughout the different beats and throughout the CAC. We had 30 others, 13 drugs, simple assault, fraud, and vandalism. Those were your top 5 reports. Moving on to the South Park neighborhood, we have 2 beats that kind of patrol this South Park neighborhood. So we have Guzman, Purdy, Kazaki, Hole, Vermillion, Henry, Michael, and Lane. Calls for service, 867. Patrols were dominating there. 254 traffic stops. 87 suspicious persons. That's us getting out there and talking to people. Others, again, that's popping in there, and drugs. This is kind of an interesting kind of correlation. There's 42 calls for drugs. There are 29 incidents where we drew reports out for this. So your calls for service, those are basically your 911 calls, calls that officers receive on their cell phones, texts, or calls that they generate themselves. So that's all encompassing right there. And finally, the last beat that really has a lot of residents in there is your Walnut Terrace, and that's beat 523. A good chunk of that is in another CAC, Carol Lee. But again, what goes on in there also affects our neighbors and friends in Walnut Terrace. So in that little slice of the pie, there's 279 calls for service. Traffic dominated that at 118. Crashes came in the middle. That other popped up again, 13 warrants. 16 drug calls, 18 others, driving while under the influence, and then alcohol. And then you got your another tie with the other larceny of auto parts, simple assault. You had 4 officers patrolling that beat: Hammerstein, Seaman, Patton, and Driver. In the back of that, I broke down, in your packet that you guys have, I broke down the entire calls for service so you can see, everything that's going on. I just, for time's sake, I just took your top 5 categories. And I also did that with your incident reports. CAC events, what went on in your CAC for the month of March? You had the March for Life, you had a wedding at the Market Hall, St. Patrick's Day, Wake County Job Fair, First Friday. April, you have coming up, you have another First Friday, the Rock and Raleigh dinner, Lenovo Convention Display, Lebanese Festival, Raleigh Times, and Qgrass. There's a lot of more events that are out there. These are the ones that actually have parking encumbrances where I post the no parking. And I also asterisk all the ones that have alcohol permits for you. Moving on into what's going on to May. starting in May, I am going to ride 500 plus miles on my bicycle from the city of Raleigh to Washington, D.C. Last year there was about 20 of us going. This year there's going to be 63 of us riding from downtown Raleigh. We'll ride several days to Chesapeake, take a day off, and then ride from Chesapeake to Washington, D.C. If you're interested, you can follow my training on the Strava app or on Facebook under my name. Those days of those rides, I'm going to do a live track. I don't know how that's going to play with my cell phone as far as battery. I gotta leave at least 10% to check in on the wife and kids. So that's what's coming on for me in May. But that also falls on your CAC. So I will not be presenting next month. So our special guest in the back is Officer Horner. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and tell you where you patrol and all that stuff.
I'm Eddie Horner. I am one of the transit officers that predominates 515 and 516, and where the bus station's at, and we handle mostly complaints from the bus drivers and the businesses immediately around that area.
Officer, I'm who makes up that 60 people riding with you? Or 67 riding with you?
Well, most of it is law enforcement personnel from the city of Raleigh, but we're tag teaming with some officers from Greenville, Cary, and a couple other small departments. There's also going to be a survivor. This is to honor fallen officers and their family members, and we raise money to give family members the ability to go seek treatment and counseling and go to camps. And this year we're going to be graced with 3 survivors. All 3 of them, their brother and son was killed in the line of duty out in Asheville. He was a canine officer, and he and his canine were ambushed. So we're going to be blessed to have somebody ride with us that actually is going through what we're raising awareness for. Once we arrive in Chesapeake, we're going to meet up with other law enforcement organizations from Texas, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. It'll be approximately 600 riders riding from Chesapeake to Washington, D.C. I know Sergeant Marks has a few things to go. Are there any questions or concerns?
That information that you posted, where can it be found so that people can compare it with the north side of Raleigh?
If you go to crimemapping.com or you go to our city website police page, there is a link that can take you to the other CACs and the other areas. It is the civilian things version of that. So
what version were we just looking at?
you were looking at my police version, where I have access to the sex offenses and stats. Those are not available on the civilian version.
Why not?
Drawn out answer, I don't know. I suspect that there is a sensitivity to it of the victims, as well as family members of the victims.
No information is being shown about the victim.
Again, that's how it was relayed to me as far as why it's not there. If you would like a specific answer on that, I'd be happy. You can drop me an email, send me a text, and I'll meet up with the major that heads up that program, and I can forward it to you as well.
Any other questions for Officer Michael?
This one right here. I don't speak to you out in the road.
I'll try to be short. I know you guys are trying to fit a lot of things into the agenda. It's good to be back. Thanks for having us. I wanted to follow up. We were asked to explore expanding the police report, which Officer Winkle has done a lot of over the past year, but we were asked to add some more details. And some of it he already is addressing. The trend information on crimes, we're trying to include that when we do see patterns. Sometimes we're sending things out on nextdoor.com if it's of an immediate necessary public interest to get out, but sometimes we're sending that to leadership to pass on to people as well. But for those that don't have internet, we try to pass out flyers, which we're doing with a lot of the reports. Another thing that Officer Winkle has addressed here tonight is getting into localized information, information about the events, about the different beats. So if there's a specific neighborhood that we didn't touch on that someone wants us to present on in the future, we can do that, or it might be an email to him or a phone call, and we can tailor, to a specific street. We can give that type of crime information out, or steer you to the crimemapping.com and help you maneuver that database as well. The other questions we were asked about was complaints and police complaints on officers within the Raleigh Police. And I just found out today that those are available on the city website, and I provided copies, and it looks like this. I put them out later, so if you came early, you probably did not get a copy. There are about 19 copies. But basically it shows complaints on officers over the last 7 years. Now, it does show that 14 are pending for the year 2017, and I've been told there's going to be a formal report on complaints in 2017. So when I get that information, I don't know if it's a month away or 2 months or 3 months, I will try to either find a link or possibly bring copies if I'm allowed to do that. So that was something I learned today I didn't know that was on there for anybody to view. Another thing we were asked to explore was information on the impact of the hospitality industry and how Raleigh, the city, brings in businesses downtown, restaurants and bars, and the effect on policing. And that's something I'm in discussions with Captain Vestal on what he wants us to share about that. One thing we're going to do is provide Sergeant Batten, he's over a 4-person squad of officers called the Hospitality Squad, and they deal with a lot of those issues in the downtown area. So I'm going to see if we can have him present at a future meeting. I'm trying to look at his availability just so he can share all the different things they do and different resources they use to combat a lot of those types of crime. The last thing was a report on per capita police force strength and trends, and I've been in discussions with the central leadership about that, and Captain Vestal as well, and he wants that request and that information to be funneled through the city and the appropriate city contact. So that is not something that I'll be able to share. And I believe those were the 5 different issues I was asked to touch on. So any questions for me about those or any other issue that you thought of since Officer Winkle presented?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Who reviews the complaints to determine whether they were unfounded or not?
That would be our internal affairs department. Yes, internal affairs, and there's a major over that with Major Rigsby.
But there still has not been a police review advisory body set up yet?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The citizen complaints about the police officers I see listed, but is there a way for the citizens to know exactly which officers are?
I don't think which officers, I'm guessing, but there's a new report coming out for 2017. I don't know what's going to be in that, but as soon as I'm aware that it's available, I will be happy to share that. I'm guessing it wouldn't be individuals listed for personnel reasons. Most of these are personnel matters. Unless somebody is charged criminally, then it would become public and it could be listed in the news.
So you all don't feel that we as citizens need to know which are the bad apples?
I can't give my personal opinion. I mean, if someone's charged criminally, it'll be shared to the public. If it's a personnel issue, there are laws to govern that. So
That's pretty much standard in any employment situation that personnel matters like that are not public information.
I believe so. Anything else?
Thank you, Sergeant
Thank
Marks.
you.
And this update in the reporting format is in response to the survey that we did in November and December, and I think we started in September. So Will has been gracious enough for this time to meet with Raleigh PD and get that information out to us and get us this new format of information. And he'll continue to work with Raleigh PD to continue to update and improve the reporting that we get as a CAC. Thank you, Will, for doing that. And if you guys have any other comments, questions, feel free to see me, see Will, and we'll continue to work with our PD and get you what you need. All right, Parks and Rec. I know Grady wasn't gonna be here, and Denise Hill, I just saw recently wasn't gonna be here. Yeah. Congratulations.
My name is Denise Saunders. I'm the Recreation District Manager for this area. I'm just going to give a couple of quick updates. Starting yesterday, Chavis's hours have moved on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So the carousel will be open on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. as well. Also at Chavis, starting on April 26th, they're going to have early voting for county commissioners, House of Representatives, Senate, and one other thing. There's so many I can't keep up, but they definitely have more information there. And also tomorrow, in support of prevention of child abuse, we're going to be planting pinwheels at the park. 2:30, we're going to be planting out on the front gardens. You guys are welcome to come by and help plant pinwheels. You're also welcome to come and take them as well. At Top Green, Grady wanted to make sure everyone knew that this month, the monthly chess program is going to move back to MLK Gardens since the weather has gotten better. Any questions about Chavis or Top Green?
What's the MLK?
He has a chess program on Saturdays, April 14th. They go out and do chess lessons and people come out and play. And when it's cool, they play here at Top Green. And when the weather's nice, they move back outside to the park. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. All right, Mr. Messenger. Public utilities.
Bear with me just a second. While I'm getting this thing operating, my name's Robert Massengill. I'm the Public Utilities Director. And I'm here to tell you just some general information about the utility and some things we've got going on. But and I carry these notes because I have a tendency to go down into the weeds and spend a lot more time than Sam's willing to let me have tonight. So I try to stick to my topics and move on. So I won't take but about 15 minutes of your time tonight. But before I start, I want to see how many know how much water you used last month or the month before that. You got any idea how much water you use? What kind of units we measure our water in?
3 CCF.
You use 3 CCF. For those who don't know what a CCF is, it's the way we measure our water. It's 100 cubic feet. The C is Roman numeral C, stands for 100. CF stands for cubic feet. And 1 CCF equals 748 gallons. Why we do it that way, it's just the way it's been done for years, and the meter programming hasn't been changed. There's a lot of jurisdictions that meter in CCF, not gallons. But just for easy math, if you wanted to say he uses 3 CCF, so that's about 750 times 3 is about 2,250 gallons that he used last month. So anybody got any idea about how much water that we pump on average every day to all of our customers? I'm going to share that with you in a minute. It's a big number.
Is there a prize?
Ma'am, there anything on the back road right there. Help yourself there. How about, how much do you think a gallon of tap water costs? Just take a wild guess. Anybody?
5 cents?
Isn't a gallon registered as 7.5, something like CC something?
You're thinking about fractions of a CCF. I'll let you know how cheap our water here is at the very end of this show, but I think it's going to be a little bit surprising to you. I hope it is. So getting started, we're a regional utility. We serve about 550,000 people in Raleigh, Garner, Roseville, Wake Forest, Knightdale, Wendell, and Zebulon. We merged utilities with those towns around us in a period between 2000 and 2007. Raleigh now owns and operates all of the utilities in Raleigh as well as those towns. So how much water do we use? We use about 50 million gallons a day on average. Yesterday it was about 44 million, which is a little high. We're going into the irrigation season, so it's starting to go up a little bit. But the biggest pool complex in the city is the Optimus Pool Complex. So we tried to put it in perspective. We could fill the Optimus Pool Complex and all their pools 85 times with the water that we used in one day. This is our customer account makeup. We got about 200,000 customers, 92% which are residential, using 63% of the water. This is a map of our major facilities, and you can see we cover most of Wake County, but not all of Wake County. We have our, see if I can find my pointer here. We have our large water treatment plant up here to the north off Falls and Neuse Road called the E.M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant. It's an 86 million gallon a day plant. If you ever hear me say MGD, that stands for million gallons a day. 86 million gallons a day treatment plant. We get our raw water from Falls Lake for that plant. It's a 51-year-old water treatment plant. So we're in the process right now of updating, rehabbing, and upgrading that plant. We also have another water plant down here on the south side in Garner, right off 50 Highway near Lake Benson. It's called the D.E. Benton Water Treatment Plant. It's a 14 MGD, million gallon per day water treatment plant. And it serves all of Garner, of course, but it serves most of downtown, southern Raleigh, including all of downtown. The water that we drink here in this facility probably comes from the Benton plant. And by the way, we won the best tasting water in the state again last year, so we do have good water quality. On the wastewater treatment side, we only have two water plants, the Johnson plant and the Benton plant down here to the south. But on the wastewater side, our large plant is the Neuse River plant down on Battle Bridge Road, not too terribly far from here. Right now it's a 60 million a gallon a day plant. We're just completing an upgrade to take it to 75 million gallons a day, and we'll meet our treatment capacity needs well into the future. We call it the Resource Recovery Facility, which may seem like an odd name for a wastewater treatment plant, but the name indicates that we do more than just treat wastewater at that plant. We use the biosolids for fertilizer, composting, and soil amendments. We use the actual treated wastewater, which is reuse water, for irrigation, toilet flushing, and cooling water for chillers. Like at Wake Med, for example, Wake Med uses reuse water to run their chillers, to cool their buildings. We also grow sunflowers on the farm fields around the wastewater treatment plant, and we use the seeds, we crush the seeds into oil that we convert to biodiesel and using the farm equipment around the farm. We've got about a 1,000-acre farm around the farm. We also have a 1.3 megawatt solar array that we create renewable energy and put back on the grid out there. But probably the most exciting thing about the resource recovery plan is a project we're building right now. We call it our bioenergy project. When you treat wastewater, you have to deal with the liquid treatment and you have the solid components of that are the biosolids. Well, we have a project that's coming up that will take the solid components, reduce the volume by at least a third, and then we'll convert, it'll generate methane gas. For those who were around back when the Sunnybrook Road wastewater treatment plant was around on Sunnybrook Road, anybody remember being able to look over and see the flare? At night you could see the flare? That was type technology back then, but we weren't beneficially using that gas. We were just flaring it. So this project will take that gas, convert it to compressed natural gas. We're going to put it back on the grid, and we're going to use it to fuel the city's bus fleet. So it's a win-win project for the utility and the city's bus fleet. We're really excited about that, and I could probably go on and on, but I'll move on. We also have two more wastewater treatment plants up in Wake Forest. We have the Smith Creek plant, which is a 3 MGD plant, and in Zebulon we have the Little Creek plant, which is a 2.2 MGD plant. Both of those plants were acquired as part of the utility mergers with those towns. And as part of our resiliency efforts, we'll move around here a little bit. We have interconnections in our water system with Johnston County, up here near Wendell, also with Johnston County down on Highway 70 toward Clayton. We have interconnections with Cary, and we have interconnections up near Briar Creek with Durham. And we have traded water back and forth when our utilities have all needed to help each other out. So this is an aerial view of the Johnson plant. You can see Falls and Use Road there on the right. This large concrete structure is what we call the clear well. It's where we put the finished drinking water before we send it out into the system. You can see a solar array sitting on top of that. It's a 0.25 megawatt solar array that we own. We're actually selling energy back to Progress Energy for their renewable energy portfolio at a higher rate than we actually pay for energy. So we're recovering some of our cost here on this. And this is the Dempsey Benton plant down in Garner I was telling you about. You can see Lake Benson there in the background. The Neuse River plant, which is down on Battle Bridge Road, up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see where some of the dirt's still disturbed for the project that's going on now. It's further along than this photo shows to take us to 75 million gallons a day. A little bit about our numbers. Our assets, we've got about 2,400 miles of water pipes, about the same amount of sewer pipes. We've got about 60,000 valves, 22,000 fire hydrants, 26 elevated tanks, and about 114 sewer lift stations. And I like to use this graphic to sort of put in perspective how much pipe do we have underground. We've got enough pipe to reach to Las Vegas, water pipe to reach to Las Vegas, and enough sewer pipe to get us back home. I know what they say about what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but our sewer pipe's bringing us back home. So this is obvious. When you see this right here, you know you've got aging, failing infrastructure. But our underground water pipes and our sewer pipes are out of sight. They're out of everybody's mind, probably except for mine, until something like this happens. And then they're on everybody's mind. What's happening here? And there becomes a level of awareness gets raised. But we've got an old system. Our system dates back to 1887. The first Raleigh system was, we took over an existing private system in 1887. As a matter of fact, on downtown, on Martin Street, there is a 14-inch cast iron water pipe in the street that is was put in 1890, and it's still in service. So we've got lots of old pipes, over 100-year-old pipes. This red is representing older pipes. Green, the dark green represents newer pipes. As you can imagine, as you get further away from the core of Raleigh, you see the newer pipes being put in the ground. You know, we focus a lot of our efforts on the older pipes because a ductile iron pipe that our water system's made of typically lasts about 100 years. That's the expected life for a water pipe. We build our system out of ductile iron for that reason, so we can get that longevity out of that. But
what about rust?
Pardon me?
What about rust on the older pipes?
The rest of our older pipes?
No, the rust.
Oh, the rust? The ductile iron pipe has a cement mortar lining on the inside, so it doesn't corrode as bad on the inside as some of our cast iron pipes. And then the outside has bituminous coatings and other coatings to help resist against corrosion on that too. About 60% of our system's been put in since the 80s, so in pipe years we've got a relatively young system. But like I said, we've got a bunch of pipes that were put in before World War II. We need to be focusing on those and addressing those. But what we're finding is some of these green pipes that are not that old, put in the 80s, especially our large diameter concrete pipes, they're not holding up. Concrete and sewer do not get along. So what we're finding is some of our 1980s vintage concrete pipes, which is our large diameter pipes, like the Walnut Creek Interceptor, that's not too far from here, are already failing and we're having to replace them. So old doesn't always mean bad. As I'm finding out, I'm hoping the older I get. 60's getting younger every day. All right, so I need to get back on my script here so I don't run down a rabbit hole. All right, so what are we doing about our aging infrastructure? We develop an asset management plan, and what that means is, for an asset management plan, the first step is to figure out what you got in the ground. What size are our pipes? What material are they made out of? What decade were they installed? And you may intuitively say, well, you ought to already know that. But remember, some of these pipes were put in the 1800s, in the early 1900s, and those records just certainly aren't electronic, and getting the paper records is a little more difficult. So that was a task, and we're still working on that, but we have most of that. The next thing is to determine which pipes are most critical or have the highest consequence of failure. One of those water transmission main would have a high consequence of failure. A large diameter sewer pipe, if it fails, it's a high consequence with raw sewer flowing into the streams. Once we've identified our critical assets, we need to know what the consequence of them failing is, or the condition or the probability of them failing. We want to know what the condition is, so we go out and we try to find that condition. And I mentioned the Walnut Creek Interceptor. It's a pipe that's not far from here that carries the wastewater from this particular area and flows toward the wastewater treatment plant. Very critical asset. Over here on 5, we did condition assessment on it this past year and found that we have a condition, a high probability of failure. As a matter of fact, it had pinholes and it was leaking. We're down there now. For anybody who's been on the Greenway near the softball complex, we're replacing that pipe right now. It was not a planned replacement. It worked its way right to the top of the CIP when we did condition assessment and found out we had a very critical pipe that was failing. Another example where we've done condition assessments on very critical pipes, it's not always that bad, is we'll find a critical pipe, but we'll find it's in pretty good condition, so all we need to do is keep an eye on it. It's still really critical. We don't need to forget about it, but we don't have to go replace it right now. So what does all that cost? For the stuff that you can see above ground, like our wastewater plants, our water plants, our elevated tanks, pump stations, and that type thing, about $2 billion replacement costs. Billion. The things that you can't see underground, the pipes that we don't think about, at least 3 times that much. So, speaking about cost, what this graphic represents is the blue band across the bottom represents our total operating cost. Things like salaries, chemicals, electricity, all the things that we have to do, fuel for our vehicles every day to make sure that we stay in business. Now, we've really worked hard to keep this line as flat as we can, and up until last year it started creeping up when we had a lot of main breaks in some major thoroughfares like Rock Quarry. I remember we had a really bad main break in Rock Quarry that ripped up a lot of pavement there, Capitol Boulevard and Six Forks Road. So those types of things hit our operating budget pretty hard. The top band, the pink band, represent debt service. That's our mortgage and that's our interest and principal payments, just like your home mortgage. If you took your home mortgage and multiplied it times 12 and paid it once a year, that's what this would be. So that has remained fairly constant over time, only planned slight increases. But really what's grown is this wedge here in the middle. And this wedge in the middle represents the pay-as-you-go cash that comes from the utility bill that we're putting right back into the pipe replacements. So this is what your utility rate increases have gone for over the last few years. We're putting it right back into the ground in these pipes that we're finding failure. And based on what we're finding, this needs to continue to increase so that we don't have failure, so we can get out in front of it. I like to show this to demonstrate that the red line is the number of accounts that we have, and even it flattened out a little bit during the recession. Things right here in 2010, but we've been on a constant growth rate. We've been growing about 10,000 people a year in the service area since about 2010. The blue line represents our total consumption. And intuitively, you might think that this line should parallel that line.
Yeah.
And it used to. It used to before we implemented tier rates, before high-efficiency fixtures are standard in every house now. Every new house has a high-efficiency fixture. And if you do a retrofit, it's hard to find a high-flush toilet. So everything's got low-flow toilets, low-flow washing machines, dishwashers. Everything's more efficient. What we're also finding is our customer makeup is looking a little different. We have more people wanting to live in multifamily settings, in apartment complexes, and some of these high-rises that you see downtown. And a unit there just doesn't use as much water as a single-family unit does. So that's part of the driver behind this line here staying so flat. Now that's got good and bad. What it does is it lets us defer plant expansions, capacity type expansions, because our demand is not growing. But it hurts us on the revenue side. Because about 65% of our revenue comes from the usage charge or the volumetric components, the per CCF charge on the bill. And I like to show this as an example of no matter how much water you use, we're going to have the same number of sewer overflows, same number of main breaks. We send out the same number of bills. We man our plants 24/7, 365, even on Christmas Day. We have a little bit of fluctuation in our operating costs with chemicals and electricity. But over on the revenue side, about 65% is based on how much water you use, and about 35%. And when we're looking at rates, I understand that this is not favorable to a low-income, fixed-income family, that when there's increases on the fixed component of the bill, there's nothing you can do to control that. You can't use less water, it won't help that any, and I understand that. But we've tried to seek this balance in 65-35 to provide a little bit more revenue stability on the fixed side of the bill, but keep enough over here so you're still encouraged to use water efficiently. Don't waste water. Ideally, I could charge a fixed rate, but you'd use all you want, and I couldn't make enough water to satisfy everybody's demand. So we still have to have some on the volumetric side to motivate efficient usage. Our rates are right in the middle compared to our peers around here. We're not outrageous. We're not the cheapest, but we're right in the middle. And so I asked you before, what does a gallon of tap water cost? Well, it depends. A gallon of water depends on how you buy it. If you get it in these big jugs, it's going to cost you a lot in the grocery store. This costs a lot when you buy this by the gallon. But it's made in Raleigh, out of Raleigh water. But it costs 1.5 cents per gallon, including sewer service, for your water and taking the sewer away. Actually, water's about 0.6 of a penny per gallon, tap water. And that factors in your fixed charges on your bill too. So, I mean, what I like to try to leave you with is think about the other things that are important in your life, your cable TV, your internet, your cell phone, your electricity, and how do those compare for $1.88 a day? Which one could you go without the longest? And if you will, leave you with a thought. Just imagine a day without water. It's something that we all need, and I think we've taken it for granted for a really long time. So I appreciate you having me here tonight. I'm sorry if I ran long.
No, that's fine. I do have a quick question, Robert. What percentage of the infrastructure underground do you think needs repairing, or needs replacing, I should say, in terms of pipes?
Well, we're doing condition assessment all the time. It's hard for me to put a percentage on it. I know that we did condition assessment in the State Street Basin. Is that this CAC? State Street? State Street, where the Wetlands Center is. And we...
State
It's generally in this area. It's not at red. What we're finding is places like the older parts of town, like Southeast Raleigh, like Boylan Heights, like Cameron Village. You can name the older parts of towns that were developed in the early 1900s. That's where our focus needs to be, because that's where the old clay sewer pipes are separated joints, and we have water main breaks and things like that. Yes, sir.
I have a two-part question. The first is, you mentioned that there were neighboring municipalities for whom you sell water. Do you charge those customers the same that you charge a City of Raleigh resident, or is it?
On that slide where I showed the interconnections with our neighbors,
Yeah, you said you sold.
we have emergency water supply agreements, and we don't exchange water on a daily basis. And what we do in those cases is we sell each other our water for what we charge ourselves. So it's just trading back in water and helping ourselves out. We're not in the business of day-to-day selling to Cary and Johnston County. We're just there to help each other out if we need. We do serve customers outside the city limits, and some in the county.
Do you charge them the same that you charge a
No,
Raleigh customer?
they pay a higher rate than the customers inside the city limits. They sure do.
So that have the city names written on it?
Ma'am?
Beside, the big tanks that have the city names written on it. Besides CIA agents' offices, what is in that tank?
What's in the big water tanks in the air?
I don't know if it's a water tank, I'm asking you, what is in the big tank?
Drinking water. The way we make pressure is we pump water up into the air and put it in tanks. The higher you lift water, the more pressure it creates on the ground. For every 2.1 feet you raise water, you create 1 PSI. So if you had say 150 foot tall tank, you'd have about 70 pounds of pressure at the bottom. My math may not be that good, but that's why the tanks are up in the air. And that's why we have so many different pressure zones. You can imagine Briar Creek has an overflow tank elevation of 650 feet. And downtown Raleigh has an overflow elevation on our tanks of 495. So there's, over 100 feet elevation difference. And we have to keep water in the air relative to the ground in those areas or they won't have adequate pressure.
As the city grows and Falls Lake doesn't get any bigger, what steps, and you may not have a short answer for this, I don't want to take a lot of time, but what are y'all thinking about for Raleigh's growth and how to provide water for the future?
Well, we've been planning for our next water supply, is what you're talking about. Where are we going to get our next water supply from? Well, you saw Falls Lake. We don't own Falls Lake. The Corps of Engineers owns Falls Lake. And we have an allocation of about half the water in Falls Lake. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but they have what's called a water quality pool, and we have a water supply pool. It's all the same water, it's just divvied up. Well, we're in the final stretches of getting them to reallocate more water out of water quality to the water supply pool, and we hope to have that by this July. So we're really close to having our next water supply to last us to 2045 is the planning window for that. So keeping our fingers crossed. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. How many gallons do you have to take out of the fire hydrant? I know sometimes they release the water from the fire hydrant, and it seems to be a lot of water.
Right.
And what is the purpose of releasing so much water?
It depends on what you saw them doing. If you'll notice typically this time of year, sometime around the 1st of April, we'll usually do what we use chloramines to disinfect our water, and typically this time of year we switch back to free chlorine. And so we would typically be flushing hydrants to pull that free chlorine through the system all the way from the plant. But day in, day out, if somebody calls with a water quality complaint and says my water is discolored, we're going to send somebody out to talk to you. And if it's something in the system, we'll flush the system to see if we can clear the water up. Typically we can. Usually there's a reason why it did that. The water moved in a different direction because something was going on over here, a hydrant got turned on or something. And we can usually clear the water up by flushing. Now we keep track of that water because we want to know how much that is, so we don't count it as a leak. We knew we flushed it intentionally. Yes, sir.
So, looking at the chart with the 65-35, so in trying to conserve water, does it mean that it gets to a point, it doesn't matter how much water you conserve, it's not going to show so much on your bill?
Right.
Because of the 35.
Well, the hardest thing I had to explain during the drought of 2010, and this is the reality, is you asked me to conserve, I conserved, and you raised my rates. So it's tough to explain it, but it was the reality, and a lot of it is it's because they're, like with a tax increase, if you have a tax increase when there's a new development, well, that tax revenue automatically increases because that value of that property went up. Or stormwater, when a new development's built and there's new imperviousness, that's the basis. There's going to be more revenue. But for us, we can add customers and not necessarily add revenue, which really is tough to imagine, but it's the reality we're in. At some point, this blue line is going to turn and start mirroring the red line. And our consumption will start growing at our growth rate at some point once everybody's changed their fixtures out. But we still have a lot of customers with old fixtures.
Yeah, I'm just a little off. I'm just wondering, I used to work for the same plant over here on February.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm just wondering, those old buildings, they also were, well, that plant was also the emergency shelter for this side of town. Now, what uses are y'all putting those buildings in?
Well, we don't own that building anymore. Actually, we own the property around it where the large tanks, if you were at the plant, you remember the large tanks in the back? We still use those as wide spots to pump water. But the building got sold many years ago to a private entity, and they've still got it. I've been in it. It's really nice, a lot of 1/8 fixtures and things in there, but right now nothing's happening with that building.
That was a shelter, and one time it was really supplied with emergency food stuff. So I was just wondering what happened to that area. I know we moved the food in 75, but the area was still designated for emergency shelter.
Yep.
I'd like to ask about the sewage leak that we had 2 days ago in North Raleigh.
Sewer overflows?
That we had in North Raleigh 2 days ago.
Doesn't surprise me. We have a low sewer overflow rate, but would that happen from time to time? I don't know every detail about every sewer overflow.
Do you know about that one?
What street was it on?
I don't recall the one.
It's okay.
Maybe it was actually ended up in the river.
Can I follow up with you later to talk about that and to keep from bogging everyone else down? If that would
I
help.
appreciate that.
I'll be glad to talk to you about it. Well, we don't like them. I mean, we want to do everything we can to prevent them and stop them as soon as we can. So if you see an overflow, call us. There's a $50 reward for turning them in. We don't want them.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, thank you.
No, that's fine. Robert Murray, Transportation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am not Rob Murray. My name is Trung Vo, and I work for the City of Raleigh Department of Transportation, and I'm here to talk to you about our forthcoming bike share system. So who has heard of bike share? Okay. Who's tried bike share in another city? Great. Well, this is good because this is a really quick overview of what bike share is. And let me pull up the presentation here. Oh, and I just want to start by saying this is not Lime Bike. So if you've seen those green bikes around town, this is not what this is. This is a different type of system, and I'll get into the differences in just a second. All right. Okay. So I'm not too far from here. I'm actually in North Central CAC. You know where the DMV is on New Bern? I'm like a block west of that. So we live in a little house there, me and my wife and my 16-month-old. Sorry, time flies when you have a kid. All right. So Raleigh Bike Share. Bike Share is basically a way for people to get from point to point using a public bike rental system. So right now, bike rentals, you might go to a bike shop and you check out a bike and it's $20 a day. This is a little bit different because there are stations all around downtown. And this is different than Lime Bike because you pull it from a station and then you return it to a station. So you can't just leave it on someone's front yard. You've got to return it to a station. So the advantage of this is that you always know that there's going to be bikes in certain locations. And if you're looking to check out a bike, you can just go up to the station. So let me get into some of the basics. How do you use bike share? The very first thing you do is sign up. You can go to RaleighBikeShare.com. It's not live yet because the system isn't launching until this summer. But once it does launch, you can go to the website. Half of the stations will have walk-up kiosks, so you can walk up and there's a little screen. You can type your information in. You can pay via your mobile phone. If you don't have a mobile phone, then you can also take advantage of cash payments. So that's going to be rolling out along with the rollout of bike share. And then we're also integrating with transit. And so if you happen to purchase a Go card through Go Raleigh, then you can also add an option to pay for bike share on that. So we're really trying to make this accessible. This is not for the people just with credit cards, people just with smartphones, or people that are already comfortable on bikes. We're trying to make this as accessible to all of Raleigh as possible. So then you check out the bike. You walk up to a station, you enter the code, or you swipe your little fob thing, you pull out the bike, and then you ride. And it is a ton of fun. And it's really great to check out as a group as well. And then you return to a station, as I mentioned. And so there's an incentive to not just leave it somewhere on the ground. You've got to return it to a station. So the system is being planned and implemented by a company out of Montreal. There's this long process to pick the best team, and this company has implemented bike share in Birmingham, Richmond, Baltimore. They're working on South Carolina, Columbia, and then they're also working on a couple of different communities in the western part of the United States. And they've got about a handful in Portugal and Germany as well, so we really trust their experience. As I said, it's a dock-based system. There are 30 stations across the city of Raleigh, which I'll show you, which is in the first phase. There's actually a second planned phase, but we need the money and the political support. And then there are 300 bikes. Half of these bikes are going to be e-assist bikes. So if you ever thought to yourself, you know what, I just can't, I don't think I can keep up, or I don't feel like I'm physically able to, or maybe you're in business clothes and you're working during the day, but you want to ride a bike to lunch, but you don't want to get sweaty. Well, half of the bikes are going to be e-assist bikes, and what that means is it's not like a scooter. You don't press a button and you go. It just helps you with pedaling, so you don't have to work quite as hard. And Raleigh's pretty hilly, so it's a help whether or not you want it. So this is just a map of the stations. These are still being worked on, but I have a bunch of flyers in the very back with some information on the front, and then there's a map on the back. But you can also see the same exact map on RaleighBikeShare.com. You can also go to RaleighNC.gov and Google bike share. You'll find it. You can go to BikeRaleigh.org. We're trying to get the word out as much as we can. So if you have any trouble finding it, please get in touch with Sam, and he can provide my contact information. I can help as much as you'd like. So the station locations, the way that they look is going to depend on where they are. So some of them are going to be right on the sidewalk, where the sidewalk is wide enough. We have to follow certain regulations and standards in terms of providing enough space. And so there's always going to be enough space on the sidewalk, even if there's a bike share system on the sidewalk. Some of them are curbside, and so we're taking advantage of some just unused space in the street, and we're going to be placing stations in the street. So we're going to try to do as much as we can, make them safe, make them feel safe with posts and paint and whatnot. And the final kind of version category of bike share stations are in plazas and parks. A good handful of our stations are going to be in parks because we recognize people are going to check them out and just want to ride around the park. So what do the bikes look like? This is what they look like. I won't go through all of this, but there's a GPS on every bike. And so if one of our bikes is going 60 miles per hour on I-40, we're going to know. But it also gives us some information, right? Because I'm a planner, and I don't want to waste resources and funding on infrastructure or improvements that aren't going to get used. And so the great thing about bike share is that the people that use bike share are generally newer to bike share, or they're tourists. They're not from in town. And so the great part about that information is that we're going to see where people are riding, which is really exciting. And it's all anonymous, of course. There won't be any personal information that we get. But it gives us an idea of how many people are using which streets. There are lights on the front and the back. As I mentioned, there's a pedal assist motor. And the seat is adjustable. I will say that if you're on the very short side, you might want to try it out, make sure it works. If you're on the very tall side, it's kind of the same deal, but it's one size fits most. The stations look a little bit like this. This is actually a rendering from Richmond, actually. So there's a kiosk, and it's a little hard to see, but there's a little keypad and a screen, and there's a map that shows you what the stations across the city look like. And then the bikes themselves have branding on the rear fender and on the bike itself. And as I mentioned, there are a number of different ways to pay. These are sort of our preliminary numbers for for our fare structure. So you can, there's sort of a subscription option. You can sign up for a day, and that'll be around $6. You can sign up for the month. You can sign up for the year, or you can just pay for like you do transit, and it's $2 a ride. So you pay $2, you ride, and then you're done. And then there are special discounts, and so if you qualify for food stamps, then it'll be $5 a month. Or if you're a student, it'll be, I believe it is maybe $10 a month, somewhere around there. But there's a significant discount for low-income and student riders. And then again, you can pay online. You can also get a fob. You can pay at the kiosk. You can pay via your mobile app. You can pay via cash, or you can use your Go card for Go Raleigh. And you might be asking, I would never get on a bike. You know, what good is bike share? So even if you're not going to ride a bike, and that's totally okay, there are lots of reasons why bike share is good for individuals and at the aggregate level for a community. And the reasons are because they can save money, they can save time, it helps you to be green, helps you to be healthy, and frankly, it's a lot of fun. Every person that decides to ride a bike instead of drive is one less car on the road, and so if you feel like there's a lot of traffic, then bike share could be a solution to that. So really quickly, the timeline, we're in the process of station planning right now. What that means is we got to find power, we have to find space, we have to talk to residents where parking might be removed, we have to talk to our parking division, we have to talk to Parks and Recreation. So there's a lot of coordination that has to happen. And then in May and June, that's when you'll actually start seeing these stations on the ground. There's going to be a founding member campaign, so if you sign up for a membership before the system even launches, then you get a lot of special perks. I'm not really sure what those are yet, but it's going to be a lot of fun, so I promise it's going to be a lot of fun. And then finally, we're going to launch in the summer time frame. So I went through a lot of information really quickly. I have a number of flyers in the back there. You can email me, or you can just go to RaleighBikeShare.com. Do we have a few minutes for questions?
Yeah, take a few.
Ben.
So for cash payments, will that be done at the kiosk itself, or you have to go to like more square or something like that?
So that will not be done at the kiosk itself. There's actually a fairly rigorous process to go through in order to enable cash payment. Because you might be wondering, what's to stop someone from just sliding in a 5 and just rolling off, right? So we're going to be working with local convenience stores like CVS, and also the folks that are working as the operators themselves. You can also pay via cash, but you basically sign up with your name, your mailing address, you give them your information, and then they send you a card in the mail, and then you can load that card with cash whenever you go to a convenience store. So it's a little bit, it's annoying if you've got to do it, but it ensures some sense of accountability so that we're reducing theft of the bikes. Yes?
How is the city thinking about helmets? And the reason I ask is because a lot of visitors, maybe inexperienced riders utilizing it, is it just to encourage people to bring their own helmet, or is there other?
That is a great question. So, pop quiz. True or false? You have to wear a helmet when you're riding a bike. True or false?
False.
It ought to be true? Okay, all right. So state law is that if you're 16 or under, or 15 or under, you have to wear a helmet when you're riding a bike. If you're 16 or older, then it's really up to your discretion. There are a couple of bike share systems that have provided, but like the one in Vancouver, they actually have helmets that just are strapped to the bikes themselves. And the one in Seattle a couple of years ago, they actually have bins of helmets that you can check out. Unfortunately, what they found is that the usage was a little bit iffy because, helmets that get used over and over again, they start to get this scent to them, even with a lot of Febreze. So there are going to be programs that we're going to be taking advantage of to actually just give away helmets. So if you are, one of our first users, then we'll give away helmets. But there isn't really going to be a way for you to rent a helmet if it's after that point. Was there a question back here?
Yes. Is this in conjunction with the line bike, or is this something completely different?
Yes and no. So the line bike system is NC State system. So those bikes are primarily staged on campus. If they make it off of campus, then they have a number of staff to return them to campus or at least to the Hillsborough Street area. We're working with them though because bike shares is intended to be sort of a seamless mode of transportation. And so this is separate. It's not the same. This is going to be managed by the city of Raleigh, whereas Line Bike is managed by NC State. However, we're working really closely with them to make sure that a user of bike share understands the difference and the opportunities between both. The biggest thing really is that with stations, they're very, very expensive. And so we can only work on so many at one time. And so the beginning of this system is going to really start within the core of downtown. Line bike, a system that doesn't require you to return a bike to a station, that can serve areas where we just haven't gotten to yet for the time being. But NC State system should be growing in the next year or two. Yes?
I was curious what the forecast is in terms of level of investment needed to manage the program, and if there's a point at which it might be break even or better.
When you say investment, do you mean like local money, or
city money?
So we are actually taking advantage of a proposal by this company, but where there's no cost to the city at all in terms of local money. At least for the year-to-year operations. There is some local money. I think it equates to about $200,000 of local money that is a local match for the federal grants. But outside of that, the year-to-year operations, it's intended to be covered by sponsorships as well as revenues. So there won't be any cost to the city.
Like in Boston with their bike share program, Citibank has all the signage on all this stuff. So that's what you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So there's going to be a couple different levels. There will be the opportunity for a title sponsor. You get your logo on every single bike. There will be opportunities for station sponsors where you get to have a sponsorship poster display on the stations. And there will be also opportunities, if you're a smaller sponsor, you can get your logo on the app or the website. It's really intended to be sort of self-sustaining.
So to recap, it's about $200,000 of city money. The rest of it's federal grants that this company knows how to write all the grants for.
Well, no, we have already secured the grant. Okay. Yeah, so it was a $2.1 million grant. We had
$2.1 million of federal money.
It's 2.1 total, and the federal money was about 1.6 million. There was about 200, and I can't give you the exact numbers, 200 from the city, and then Wake County also provided a contribution. And the NCDOT put in, I think there was like $25,000 in there. So it's kind of spread across sources.
So you think that the advertising component of it's critical to it reaching break even?
Absolutely,
How
yes.
much revenue is that going to throw off of that?
So the projection for annual operation expenses is probably in the 550 to 600,000 ballpark. Those are just sort of my guesstimates. And about half of that, or a little bit more than half, should be coming through revenues, and about a third would be coming, sorry, let me take that back. About a third would be coming from revenues, and the rest of it would be through sponsorships.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me answer one more question, and then we'll move along the agenda. Thank you, Sam, for your graciousness. One more question. So question about accidents, and your question is?
My question is about site routes, where the location, is there certain places they're supposed to ride and other places they don't? It's very important for people who actually drive the car.
Absolutely, yeah, okay. So I feel like these two questions are actually interconnected. So your question was about where is a bicycle supposed to ride? Can they just ride wherever they want, right? Well, I would suggest that there are probably some streets with less traffic and lower speeds that feel safer to ride. But bicyclists, by law, state law and local law, are considered legitimate users of the street. So they can use any streets as a bicyclist. You might have a question about sidewalks as well. Sidewalk riding, if you have small children and they're going the speed of a pedestrian, if they're going walking speed, riding on a sidewalk is not a big deal because you're not really concerned as a walker about someone hitting you while they're on the bike. But if you're, if you're fit and you're going 15, 20 miles per hour on a bike, number one, pedestrians aren't expecting you, and number two, drivers aren't expecting you to be riding on the sidewalk. So it really is context sensitive, depending on what's around you, what is safe and what's not. And then, sir, you had a question about accidents. So bike share, in general, across the nation has been shown to be super, super safe. So up until a year ago, probably, there were no fatalities that resulted from anyone using a bike share system. And the reason is, I'm going to attribute it to two reasons. One is they're usually brightly colored. The one in DC is bright red, and so it's really hard to miss them. You see them. And then number two, the people that use bike share generally ride a lot more slowly. So they're not booking it down a hill, and they're not going 20, 25 miles an hour. They're going like 6 miles an hour. So there's a leisurely pace, and it's really easy to react to them. And they also tend to be a lot more cautious. So I'm fairly confident that the bike share, especially with more people using bikes on the road, is going to be pretty safe. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. All right. Moving right along, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good evening. I know you guys have been working through a couple of presentations already, so I will try to be brief, but also comprehensive. My name is Chris Larson. I'm the new CEO with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance. By show of hands, how many of you have heard of the Downtown Raleigh Alliance? Many of you? Okay, very good. So I am 3 months on the job now, but I'm not new to North Carolina. So I was born and raised in Raleigh. And I started my career with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance in the early 2000s, and I worked for the city of Raleigh, and then I moved all the way to the West Coast to work in downtown Long Beach, California, where I worked for 4 years, and then up into Michigan, where I worked in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. So one of the recurring themes in my career is the word downtown seems to precede every place I've ever worked. And it is basically the only thing I know how to do is to work in downtown management. Our organization has the pleasure of managing a couple of services in the downtown area, and generally speaking, our area is Peace Street on the north, and on the east it kind of jogs in and out around Oakwood district, so we don't get into single-family neighborhood districts. We go as far south as MLK, and then pick up a part of the Warehouse District, and then Glenwood South on the northwest. I personally live right there in the corner of the district, right there by the McDonald's on Peace Street. So I live just inside the district in downtown. So some of the things that our organization has done in the last year. So one of our major programs is our ambassador program. So to see folks that have red uniforms that patrol the public realm. And they do a number of different things. They assist motorists who might need a battery jump in the middle of downtown. They provide directions, recommendations to people. They patrol the parking decks in downtown. And then we also do a lot of safety escorts. So for people that might be after dark, they can't remember where they parked their car, we oftentimes respond to provide that level of escort to individuals. We also provide a lot of information about what's going on in downtown, so any number of different social media channels, or even presentations like this, just to keep people aware of what's going on. We also maintain the downtown website, which is listen to me, this is the Grand Rapids coming out of me, downtownraleigh.org. Some of the things that have been exciting in the last year, our food and beverage sales in downtown have continued to grow. Last year, the second straight year, they broke their own record at $221 million. And some of the stuff that we also do is specific to small businesses. So we administer small business grants. This is a young entrepreneur who wanted to open a business in downtown. Her name is Christine Brenner, and she opened a children's bookstore called Read With Me. She was one of 4 retailers that we worked with last year, helping them to open their business and providing them a grant to do so. Interestingly, all 4 of those entrepreneurs were also women. We run a number of different campaigns to be able to support business in the downtown, as well as events, things like First Friday, to help to activate the downtown. So there's a little bit of the events that we do. And we produced 35 of these last year. And then we also led the recruitment of the 2 grocery stores that are opening in downtown Raleigh. So the Public store as well as the Weaver Street Market in the Warehouse District. So those were some major accomplishments for the organization and a long time coming. People have been talking about grocery for quite some time. We are also, in 2 weeks, we're going to be hosting the State of the Downtown. And so this is a big event that we do on an annual basis. And I've got some flyers up here that you're welcome to grab afterwards. That really celebrates the year of investment. And I'll show you some of the statistics and these types of things that we compile. So if you're ever curious about how many of something there is in downtown, our team really works to measure all of that and compile it, and then we track it so we have statistics and metrics to use to evaluate the performance and the progress of our downtown. Over the last decade, we've seen about $3 billion of investment in our downtown, 31% increase in the overall value since the recession, and 106% increase in land value, which also has negative side effects, right? That's putting a lot of pressure on things like affordability, and it's creating some other challenges for the downtown. So on one hand, it's great to see all the progress and investment in downtown. The other hand, it creates some other struggles for us to build a culturally inclusive community. But generally, downtowns are very important. So this is a three-dimensional view of the city. What you can see here are these red spikes. And that's where the land value produces the highest amount of tax returns to be able to fund city government, to be able to fund all of the services that the city provides, even things like police and fire. You can see generally a lot of those funds come from the downtown area. And this is why it's so important to have a healthy downtown, because it helps to keep costs low throughout the whole city. You can see another spike there, which is North Hills, which is another urban center. But coming to the downtown, we have about $515 million of new developments, $700 million that is additionally that is planned, and close to $600 million in current construction. So this translates into a lot more space, things like 3,662 residential units and over 1.5 million square feet of Class A office space. These are all the kinds of things that we measure and then we provide out to the community so that they're aware of what's happening in the downtown. So again, that State of the Downtown event that's coming up in 2 weeks is where we'll debut this information. And then the report lives on our website where anybody can download it and access it for free. So it's all there, where we track things like the number of new housing units in our community relative to our peer set. So when we think of cities like Austin or Minneapolis, how do we rank relative to them in their central business district? So how are we doing against our competition? Things like the median rent per square foot. So we often talk about affordability. And affordability in Raleigh is still relatively low according to our peer set. Where you can see even places like Greenville, South Carolina, and Charlotte are at about 20 to 30% higher than Raleigh. We are about $1.60 a square foot. We're also tracking a number of different projects, and so you can find out everything about all the new projects that are under construction throughout the downtown. Things like the Peace Project over on Peace Street, as well as the F&B Tower, which will be breaking ground soon along Fayette Street. Projects that are currently under construction, like the Dillon. This is a project that is a mixed-use project with about 210,000 square feet of office space. And it's being developed by Kane Realty that built North Hills. So this is one that will deliver later this year. And One Glenwood, which broke ground earlier this year, is a mixed-use building with a combination of office space as well as retail space. Trong already hit on bicycle improvements, so I don't have to talk about that. But of course, we do have our multimodal center that is going to be opening later this month. So April 30th will be the ribbon cutting on Union Station on the west side in the Warehouse District. Things like walkability are very important to our work. At the end of the day, we all experience the downtown as a pedestrian, and so this is some metrics that are important for us to think about. Our competitive advantages, and you can see downtown Raleigh, on average our walk score is at 95 relative to the average for cities in the Triangle, which is 28. So we're much more walkable, but there's always opportunities to improve that. And we can do some of those things through improvements in parks and green space. So between Moore Square, the opportunities at Dix Park, Chavis Park, which is also due for renovation. There's a lot of great improvements that are happening to parks and open space. Retail has been a major focus of our organization for quite some time. We have worked with 37 new stores since 2014. And you can see there's a number of new brands that are coming to the community, including the YMCA on Fayetteville Street, so returning back to Fayetteville Street. And this is a good and a bad thing. We hear people that are very much in support of more retail, but there's also the challenges associated with once you start getting successful, it means that some of the bigger brands want to come in because you've proven the marketplace. And so that we're right at that point right now where we feel that pressure between locals and national chains and really trying to strike that balance. This is very difficult in my work. I love downtowns. I love to be able to work in this space of everything from economic development to advocacy to connectivity to transportation planning. But at the end of the day, every property in downtown is owned by someone other than me. And I can't tell somebody what they can do with their property. And so what we have to do is build relationships with both property owners as well as prospective tenants and other business owners to really help them to see and buy into a vision for what our community can be. And that's a major challenge for any organization, but it's why we exist. In terms of food and beverage, this is something that's very different relative to when I left the community. So I left about 10 years ago. And when I left, we had just opened Fayetteville Street. There was one restaurant on Fayetteville Street. There was not a lot happening. And all the excitement and activity was on Glenwood South. I come back 10 years later, and Glenwood South is saying, hey, we've been forgotten. What happened? Everybody's going to Fayetteville Street now. And this has been a major change. We actually see the percentage of sales between Glenwood South and Fayetteville Street are right neck and neck now. So each of them at about a third of the total amount of food and beverage sales that occur in the downtown area. The report was also great for statistics about tourism. So if you're curious about occupancy and rates for hotels, those things are also there. So some of the issues that are on our radar, which is very important. So as the new guy back in town, I'm doing a lot of listening with the community to understand some of these issues. And this is some of the ones that we're hearing about. Affordability is always sort of the top of that list. Major concern about the downtown that we are designing and who it is for. How do we create the opportunity for all people of our community to live and work in downtown? That is going to be a major challenge for us, and it's something that goes all the way up to city council level in terms of concern. National versus local, I talked about. The burden of special events, that is something that's also a very real challenge for us now. We went from having big festivals to bring people down, to help them rediscover downtown, and now we keep doing a lot of these same big festivals, but it worked. We had brought all these other people down. People came and moved downtown. Over those 3,600 new residential units, it's a thriving neighborhood now with operating businesses that are affected by events. And really trying to strike that balance is some of our current work between what the events are looking for versus what our downtown neighborhood is looking for. Experiencing a parking shortage right now, particularly as it relates to economic development. So we have folks that are trying to create jobs. I have actual companies, 5 of which want to create jobs but cannot right now because they cannot secure monthly permits from the city. So this is a real problem for us. Where we have people that want to create jobs in our community and we have no place for them to park. So that's something we're also working through. Conflict resolution is a space that we also spend a lot of time because I work in that space between all different kinds of stakeholders, whether it's a business interest or a civic interest or a neighborhood interest, and bringing people together to have dialogue, to work through problems is one of the roles of our organization. 2 more that are equally as important is issues of panhandling. That's something that comes up time and time again, particularly in the warmer months. So we are constantly wanting to have that dialogue about what we can do as a community to try to help to stem that, as well as supporting minority businesses. And that's a space that's, I think, a very real concern for ours, particularly as we look at demographic projections for how our city is continuing to grow. More communities of color are growing in the city of Raleigh, and we really want to make sure that we have a business mix that is reflective of the community that we are becoming. if I want downtown to be relevant 20, 30 years from now, we need to have a composition of business owners that looks a lot more like the demography of our city rather than a particular class of our city. So that's another major issue that we're tackling. And so I raise all of those because, again, as the new guy, I get to play that card and say, let's figure out what we're going to do about all these things. I've got fresh eyes, but I'm also from this place. Born and raised, started my career here, and it's time for us to figure out at the Downtown Raleigh Alliance what our next chapter is. And so we've recently initiated a strategic plan that was just launched 2 weeks ago. And what I'm here to do is to invite all of you to help to participate in this process. And so we've got a couple of different ways for you to do so. So we have 3 community meetings, the next of which is Wednesday, April the 11th. And that will be at the Sir Walter Apartments Virginia Dare Ballroom, and that's at 6 p.m. And then the final community meeting will be on Wednesday, May the 16th at Christ the King Church in the Warehouse District. If you cannot come to these meetings, and I have a flyer up here for this slide as well, if you cannot attend these meetings, we've also built an online portal where anybody can participate. So you can go there and you can share your ideas, you can participate with your friends and neighbors, and you just go to godowntownraleigh.com/ideas. Again, that's also on the flyer, so you don't have to write that down. But that's another way for you to be involved, to tell me how to make sure I'm doing my job well in serving this community. So that's my spiel. I want to thank you all for your patience and open it to any questions you might have.
Chris, can you speak to some of the strategies you guys are putting in place to attract or support minority businesses in downtown Raleigh area?
So right now, we unfortunately don't have specific efforts. What we have is a general retail support program, and that we offer for anybody that wants to open a business in downtown. But this is a space that I suspect through the strategic plan is going to be more emphasized.
Excuse me, Sam, we didn't hear your question.
He asked me specifically what we are currently doing to be able to support the growth of minority-owned businesses in downtown. Yeah. And I answered not enough yet. Yes, ma'am.
When does the downtown farmers market come back?
So the farmers market is coming back in May, and we are moving it off of Fayetteville Street. So it's moving it off of City Market, and we're moving it to Exchange and Market Plazas. So it'll be right across the street from Moore Square bus station. And coincidentally, it is also the home of the original City Market. So in 1840, the original City Market was built right there at Fayetteville and Exchange Plaza. And so we're bringing the market back to where the market once stood. Yes, sir.
I want to ask a question because I've been trying to understand how this organization functions. And I guess my question is, how do y'all work with the city council?
So we work with the city council because we are provided with a contract from the city council to manage the municipal services district. So the municipal services district, which is the map that I showed you in the early part, is a sub area where all of those property owners pay additional taxes. And those additional taxes go to fund our organization. I have to apply to the city council, I being the organization has to apply to the city council to manage the municipal service district. Does that help?
It's interesting. That's all I can say right now because I think that when we're dealing with the minorities downtown, this organization has failed in many ways when I look downtown. But I don't know all the ins and outs, all right, because what I see with my natural eye is not something where minorities have had the same opportunities as others to really be creative. I understand that there was grants that was given out, all right? And you pointed that out. How many Afro-Americans got those grants?
Unfortunately, I don't know. I'll have to get that information for you.
Okay. You know, we go through this over and over again, and sometimes I even wonder if you all are undercutting the will of the community by focusing directly on a goal and agenda that really the will of the community does not agree with. Certain parts of the community does not agree with. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
It's some buildings, properties that they develop and build and it's straight down East Street here, probably East and Davie, but they're building these areas. And someone had said that it was going to be a grocery store or something down there.
Stone's Warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Stone's Warehouse.
Right now?
Yes, Stone's Warehouse.
So that's my question is that going to be a grocery store? Yeah, we desperately need a grocery store in this area. I knew that you said something about the one they're developing over in the warehouses. That's over there. Say again?
So the property that you're talking about is something that's more of a collection of individual businesses. So it's not going to be a standalone grocery. It'll be a number of individual entrepreneurs that have small businesses inside of the old Stone's Warehouse. There will be some grocery-related items, but it is not a grocery store. And I don't even want to give the impression that it's anything like a grocery store because it's more of like prepared foods and other types of products. The other piece that I'll say, and I hinted at this, is that, again, without a lot of control of property, I will tell you that the Weaver Street Market that is going into the warehouse district, that was not their first choice. I mean, they really wanted to be in City Market in Moore Square, but we can't force a deal to occur with a property owner. And so that's something that you've got to have willing participation. And so that's one of the things that it's a challenge that I think we all struggle with, but we don't have a magic wand that we can wave to be able to produce that.
So who's sitting at the table to voice our opinion in your organization?
Nobody.
Sir, I guess I don't understand the nature of your question.
Yes, when you come together to create relationships, all right, that certain stores, how you gonna say, that certain stores may come in the downtown area, okay? Who is at the table with you, all right, to give, for our opinion to be heard?
You're talking about the board of directors.
But
Who's representing us?
Right.
Yeah.
Not the board of directors, they're representing the business.
That's what he's talking about. Wanting to have
When you say us, do you mean the
Community.
black
The
people
community.
or the Caucasians that are moving in now?
No, the community. Who's representing on your, the Downtown Alliance, all right?
So-
you have all these great things and great people and great connections, great businesses that are coming to downtown area, which we see with our natural eye, all right? But who that is with you that represent the will of the people in the community?
So you mean residents?
Yes.
Sir? There are 2 residential seats on our board of directors. And all of our board information is on our website. But I don't want to give any illusion as well that our board gets to make decisions about who gets to go in downtown or anything like that. I mean, there's a level of influence that does not exist in that regard because it is a property owner's choice as to who they want to develop a leasehold relationship with, or if they want to buy or if they want to sell property. Our board, there's not things that come across the board agenda for people to be able to approve those kinds of things. So that level of influence does not exist.
But the city gives you taxes, right?
The property owners pay those taxes.
Right.
Property owners pay those taxes. The city collects them in the tax bill, and then they provide them back to us to execute a contract. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Chris, so in your role of advocacy and building relationships, for too long, the residents who live in the downtown area, adjacent to the downtown area, have been asking for a grocery store. I understand you can't make this happen, but has the DRA actually been forthcoming in trying to improve a grocery store or grocery stores in the downtown area? Because we go north, south, east, and west. It's not, everything's not going north and west towards the warehouse district, north going towards the east. Anything you've been advocating for the south side, where we are? because we need, when David was here, that's what we talked about. And they kept saying we got to increase the population. We don't have enough rooftops in order to get a grocery store here. But my God, with all the people I see around here continually moving in, do we have enough people yet to get a downtown grocery store that could benefit the people who live in the south side downtown?
The answer is no. The answer is that
We don't have enough people.
we still don't have enough people to make the grocery stores that are happening on the west side and the north side make sense. And the reason that those deals got done is because we have property owners that were very generous in those lease arrangements. And they're patient because they know it's going to take until 2021 until we have the residential base that is going to enable that business to succeed. And so it's basically people are wanting to get into the market to be able to secure that space and are willing to do so.
We'll take two more questions.
Yeah, statistics on the demographic of the people in the downtown area where you work.
Mm-hmm. Yep, all of that stuff is in the report. I don't have it at the top of my head, unfortunately. Remember, I moved away a decade ago, and I've just been back a couple of months. So there's a lot of history, and there's been a lot of other conversations that I'm not aware of, and I'm still learning. Yes, Will.
I'm just curious, would it be appropriate? I'm trying to understand where the balance is and where the lines are in terms of where the DRA can try to influence what the city council will do. It was real interesting when you said a city market was their first choice. I was at a work session and they were talking all the land use about the city-owned land around downtown. There's that parking lot right next to City Market. And so the first thing that occurs to me, not knowing anything about how it works, is like, well, gee, they could have gone there. Is it appropriate, would the expectations of the city council be that, or city staff, that the DRA would try to influence land use of some of this land downtown to be more beneficial, say, from the residents' point of view? You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, so the individual side that you mentioned, the challenge then would be that there would be no place left to park for the grocery. So most grocery tenants are going to require 150 to 200 spaces because the reality fact is that we're not going to buy one bag at a time, right? So that's just the reality of the site requirements for the tenant. Okay. But to your bigger question about what is the role, to the bigger question, I think absolutely. So the city's downtown plan, which was approved in 2015, included very specific language regarding the strategic disposition of those city-owned sites. And my understanding is that city staff advanced concepts for those, and city council rejected all of those concepts. And so I think we're still at that point.
A lot of the ones that had to do with supermarkets.
Okay. I think we're still at that point where there is a dearth of good ideas that might be out there, and the political will to be able to execute on those opportunities, and really trying to create that nexus between, I think, what's possible and the city council's willingness to act on it.
All right. We'll end it there. Thank you, Chris, for coming. Thank you for the presentation. All right, we're going to go into old business, and so we can move quickly. I'm going to pass it over to the nominating committee. Mr. Sanders, Yvonne, and Ms. Ann. And while you guys get ready to do this, just want to share with the CAC that I had informed communities of school or communities in schools last month that we had voted to write them a letter of support. They appreciate the offer. Given our limited interaction and limited experience with communities and schools, I've asked them to send me a template letter so we can see what specifically they're asking for. And then I can in turn provide that letter of support. They agreed to do so. They haven't done that. Once I get it from them, I will generate our own letter of support, and I'll bring it back to the CAC as promised for you guys to see for your information. All right. That is all I have for old business. We're now going to move into the nominations and elections. Ann?
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our committee did meet, and we have an action to take based on nominations. But I asked Mr. Sanders to report on this because as the secretary standing in, I think my job is to count. So I don't think I should be doing
that is fine.
I can't hear.
That is fine.
Stand to the side of the voices. Thank you.
Mr. Sanders will give the report because as secretary, I believe it's my job to count. I don't think community services job to count.
And that's perfectly okay. You can count, or community can count, or you guys are the community of the committee.
Everyone who is a resident of the CAC has the ballot, and I don't have.
Please everybody keep in mind. Please everybody keep in mind. This is a public meeting. Everybody's welcome to a public meeting. However, you must be a citizen of the Central CAC in order to vote. Proof of residency may be required. We may need to verify those of you that's voting. All right. So if you are not a resident of the Central CAC, you are not allowed to vote.
Is that clear?
I think so.
You have something to say?
No, just raise your hand for the ballot.
Tonight, everyone, we're primarily concerned with the vice chair. We have two nominees. And just to make sure that all of us know who these people are, I'll call them and ask you to stand. Ursula McCullough.
Hi, CAC members.
Brad Johnson.
Good evening, y'all.
Mr. Sanders, just a point of clarification. Ursula, is in February when you nominated yourself, you said you were Ursula Jolly. Is it Jolly or McCullers?
Last name is marriage.
Okay.
I would like to be McCullers.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Sanders.
So, that being the case, I would like for each of us to look at your ballot, make a decision, and mark it as you choose. Go ahead.
Point of order.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have presented the two names that the committee is bringing forward, Mr. Chairman, and you now must open the floor for additional.
Oh, yeah, that's true, that's true.
You must do that to be legal.
Anything else you wanted to add? Because you introduced them. Anything else?
No, go ahead.
Okay, we will now open the floor for nomination. Anybody here want to be nominated for the vice chair of the Central CAC? No? Go ahead, Mr. Sanders.
Close the nominations.
Mr. Sanders.
You have to do that thing.
Please. Anything else you want to add, Mr. Sanders?
Just close it.
Okay, nomination is closed. Please go ahead and proceed.
Everybody mark your ballots, and they will be collected and counted.
Everybody don't have a ballot.
Somebody give me some.
So why are we using ballots instead of?
Don't worry about it, use some ballots.
But why?
That's how we chose to do it.
I'll let them do that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with that well with both of the candidates. Can you like tell us about themselves?
Well, we're voting now. Yeah, it's too late.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you, good.
Ballots counted out in public.
Do I have everyone's ballot? Okay.
Ms. Daly is available to help count.
That's fine, just double check.
In the interest of time that I'll share with you in terms of new business, Mayor McFarland will deliver the State of the City address. That's at 7:30 on next Friday, April the 6th, at CAM, Contemporary Art Museum. That's 409 West Martin Street. One good news from the City of Raleigh: citizens will no longer need to pay for parking if you park at the parking deck while attending City Council meetings on Target Street. I think your parking will be validated, so that's one less excuse for not going to City Council meeting. And starting in mid-April, Go Triangle will launch a new website. I believe it's going to be goforward.org. To help everyone understand what's happening with transit expansion in Wake County and the surrounding counties. So check it out. I don't think it's out just yet, but they made the announcement it's gonna be Go Forward. I think it's probably goforward.org.
Sam, would you say again the date and the location for the State of the City?
State of the City address is 7:30 p.m. on Friday, November 6th. That's this coming Friday. And that's gonna be at CAM. April 6th, sorry. April 6th.
At where? CAM?
CAM.
Thank you.
409 West Martin Street.
First Friday.
Yeah. Sure, proceed.
Yes. This coming Wednesday is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. My church, First Baptist, on 101 South Wilson Street, is hosting a celebration of the event. Starts at 6:30. Justice Sheriff Beasley, Judge Mike Warden, Representative Beasley will be there. And we'd like to invite all to come. It's a free event commemorating that event 50 years ago as of this coming Wednesday. 6:30, across on Wilson Street or down on Morgan Street. Let's don't get the first parking space on Morgan Street because that belongs to Mr. Sanders. Keep all of that spot. We'd love to have you for Baptist coming Wednesday.
Sanders special. Any other announcements from anyone else? Yes, Ann.
We have signs that the city has provided for us that tell about the CAC meetings, and we'd like to get them put out like a couple of days before we have a meeting to remind everybody. We've got a great turnout tonight, so I think Marquita, are the signs here?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't check, but Grady couldn't find them.
I'm sorry to distract. We can come back
Grady
to
couldn't
that.
find them, but I'll
But if anybody
okay.
would like to take a sign, which then they would put out, you agree to put it out, maybe like your corner, or your home, or your church. We have the signs, they look good, and we want, anybody who'd like to come. And if they're not here tonight, we'll have them in May.
Yeah.
So are you ready for the other thing that we talked about for May?
Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, well, one of the things that happened when our committee got together was that we thought we ought to do something for fun. I should stand over here so I'm not talking.
So, we are proposing that we have another supper. We always have a good time when we get together for the holidays. And, so without something special to celebrate though, we think that our May meeting is a good time for a potluck supper. And we will work on getting the, all the paper goods and the drinks and a few things to go along, but potluck is just like it sounds. What turns up is what we share together. And, we have a terrific community. It is changing, it is growing, and this is a good chance to invite some people to come that may not yet have been involved, maybe they came once and they want to come back. So it doesn't mean we can't do any business. I guess we could do some business that night, but primarily we thought it's time to have some fun. And so I propose that we do that. There's plenty of room for discussion about it, and if that's not the will of the group, we'll just keep our enthusiasm for another time.
I would rather have a potluck because of health concerns about food preparation and food handling. I'm coming from public school, and we had to, prevent that from happening because of health issues. What about something like where the food could be prepared here on site, like a hot dog supper or something like that, rather than coming from individual households where you won't see how the food is being handled? I mean, this is like, that's still a social, but the idea of food coming from unknown sources is the issue that I have because of health issues. Because schools, we couldn't allow any food to be brought into the school that was not prepared at the school or by public concern, not anything prepared in a private home. That's what I'm saying, health issues.
I have a question. You were mentioning something about hot dogs. Maybe have a hot dog cookout or something.
That's what I said, a hot dog supper or something like that.
We have something called burnt hot dogs at work a lot at Bell's, and that is something great. Everybody loves it.
What is it called?
Burnt hot dogs. We have something at Bell's called burnt hot dogs.
Burnt hot dogs, charred.
Yes. And it is great. Everybody loves it. And they would rather have the burnt hot dog rather than other ones. So that would be a good idea to do.
But be prepared, it will be sure.
Any other discussions about that? Okay, yes. But with that said, if the CAC still want to have a potluck?
That's not potluck.
No, I'm saying with that said, going back to the initial idea about a potluck, if we want to have it, we can make a motion.
Somebody's suggesting that we have another kind of food, that is a more controlled kind of food. What we have had at Christmas time, at the holidays, is we have had sponsors who have provided food, and that's nice, but go that route again, or some other route. I'm not sure what you think. The thing about a potluck, in my mind, and I'm hearing your concern about food, is that each person can contribute what they're capable of contributing, and we might get some homemade things.
We might get some much visits.
But we might.
Question?
How are they prepared? Is it grilled?
It's grilled.
It's grilled.
It's grilled.
Okay. Does the city have anything that can support that, Marquita? Because we may not be able to allocate to the grilled. I can look. Parks and Rec may have access.
Yeah.
I know we don't.
They're in the ground. They're not.
Okay, like a park.
Yeah. I have a grill with a bag of big bag of charcoal and milk in it. You just put yourself on the committee.
All right, I'll say pardon? Jim, we can have some additional discussion about that next month, and if we agree to do it, we'll proceed and try to do something in June.
Or July.
Or July.
Yeah, 4th of July, that'd be a July, 4th of July celebration.
All right, let's wrap up this discussion and then pass it back over to the committee.
4th to be in July, we just don't meet in September. September's on month, because we don't. Yeah, we meet in July.
Marquita?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Floor is yours.
Was that,
No, I'm sorry, and one last.
did we wrap this up or?
Yes. So I was just saying we can wrap it up and continue that discussion next month if we wanted to, or if we agree to do it now if we agree to take a vote now, or if somebody make a motion for us to do it in June or July, whenever we'll entertain that.
Maybe we can have a committee, which I'm not volunteering to be on, but if there's a group of folks that want to get together to talk about it, put together a proposal before the next meeting, and then everyone can say, wow, you guys are awesome, let's do it in June.
We do have a social committee already, so.
I hear that we're sending it to the social committee and we'll find a date. What social committee? Am I correct in thinking?
Anybody can be on it.
Do we think it's a good idea?
It's a good idea.
All right. So it's a good idea. You guys gonna flush it out and bring it back to the CAC next month, and we'll decide whether we're gonna have it, and if so, when we're gonna have it. Perfect. Monkey.
Okay. So based on the ballots received, we have 12 votes for Ms. Ursula McCullers and 13 votes for Brad Johnson and 2 ballots left blank.
12 and 13. All right. Thank you very much. That's the will of the CAC. Welcome, Brad, to Vice Chair, and thank you, Ursula, for volunteering to help. We still do have a secretary position available. You know, anyone who's interested in that, please let us know, and you can serve in many ways in helping your fellow citizens. Yes, ma'am.
You voted.
Pardon?
You voted.
I sure did.
You weren't supposed to vote.
Where is it? Does it say that? It's not in the
unless there's a tie.
Pardon?
You don't vote unless there's a tie.
No, ma'am. That's why we did the secret ballot. If I vote and my vote influence anybody, then I can't vote. But if we vote,
rules or the chair presides over the voting.
no, ma'am. I have
unless there's a tie.
I have Robert's Rule of Order right here. Unless if the vote is by ballot, everybody fill out a ballot. The chair is not influencing the vote, and that vote will count.
It sounds like there's a tie anyway, and then we can vote.
Right.
But
12 will be a tie. All right. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.